Friends and professionals, whatever I'm saying, we're back for another live episode of the Modern Lending Podcast. We are bringing you some heat because coming up November, we have a very special guest and a very special announcement to kind of round out season 3. But for those of you that have been buckling in, welcome to a season on stories. As all of you know, all of human knowledge was passed down from stories. We didn't have written word. We had to translate our knowledge through stories, and that's how we as a society grew. That's how we learned. That's how we evolved. And the mortgage industry, it's interesting. We come through this mentorship style learning field. There's no school of mortgage banking. You didn't go class. You sat behind somebody who mentored you, shared thoughts with you, and you built your career on the backs of giants. So today we're going to bring on an industry giant. It's my pleasure to introduce Dan Hanson, my father, and a mortgage banking executive for over 40 years, who has led tremendous teams in the mortgage space, been involved in tons of transitions and evolutions, and one of the best storytellers I know. So without further ado, Mikey, let's roll it. Let's bring on Dan Hanson.
Coming around again. Termination of all that we could have been. In a world where no one bothers, it is hard to believe in the truth and ignore the dreams of others with nothing to lose.
All right, we're live. Welcome. So you got to scoot in. We got to bring it tighter into the shot. We're in the studio. This is always fun to get back together in person because COVID changed the world.
True.
Still changing the world. So Dan, thanks for joining.
Hey, it's exciting to be here.
Yeah, we got to bring you in and have some conversation. So for those of you that have listened to past seasons or past episodes in this season, the theme's been stories. We've been talking about things that have been transformative, things that can help. Really with the vein of understanding that our audience is mortgage professionals. It's the people out there who are selling every day, building relationships, being challenged by the changing world and the changing industry, evolving and adapting, and some of the greatest and craziest salespeople we know. You've had the pleasure of knowing many
crazy salespeople. Exactly.
many crazy salespeople. So to kick us off on stories, we're going to do an easy one to kind of build in here.
Okay.
But how'd you find the mortgage industry? How did you get introduced to it?
Okay, that is pretty easy for me. I was actually in the title industry in the 70s. From 1977 to 1986, I was in the title industry.
Bring this a little up more.
Sorry. Oh. And I worked for a company called Safeco Title.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't exist anymore. It was bought by Chicago Title back in those days. And I really enjoyed the title business. I learned to be a salesman. I learned about relationships. I worked with real estate agents, home builders. It was a pretty easy industry to be a salesperson because your product was pretty much generic. Everybody had pretty much the same title products.
Yep.
Same pricing.
So it was just a war for relationships.
Yeah, it was just really about making friends with more people than anybody else. And by the way, you did learn some things. We had famous things called plant tours, which were really exciting.
Who doesn't want to see a title plant?
And no, back in those days, honest to God, back in those days, it was not electric. They had these huge lot books that were like I don't know, 3 feet by 2 feet.
Yeah.
And you'd open them up, and literally every document that was recorded by the county recorder was scribed into these lot books.
Yeah.
And then we had title officers and title experts that would actually take sectioned land that was being drawn for a new development, for example, and literally draw it into the books.
Gosh.
I mean, it really was like tablets
Another
from the
world.
mountain. It was
Yeah.
scary. But anyway, I was in the title industry, and when our company was acquired by Chicago Title, who I competed against, and I was really trying to decide if I was going to stay in the title industry or become a title agent, do something else.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Gary Anderson, and I worked in an organization that's now called Vistage, but back in the day, it was called Tech. Mm-hmm. And executives from different fields would get together once a month with a kind of facilitator.
Yeah, like a networking group too.
Exactly. And Gary was in that group, and I was in that group, and I was talking about the issues at Safeco, and he was talking about the issues at a little company he was starting called Directors Mortgage. And at that time, it was tiny. It was in Riverside. It had like 150 employees, and he was building it and talking about the challenges of building it, and I was listening. So when I decided to leave the title industry, Gary called me and said, "Can we have lunch?" I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
Well, great. I love you, Gary.
Yeah, we hang out.
He said, "Hey, how'd you like to come and work for me in the mortgage business?" And I go, "I don't know that much about mortgage."
Perfect.
And he goes, "Well, we do." And he said, you know a lot about people, and you know a lot about home builders, and you know a lot about all these other folks. So why don't you bring those relationships over to us? We'll teach you the mortgage business.
Yeah.
You bring your relationships, and we'll grow this thing to something big, because we don't have anybody in my company who's ever graduated from college besides myself and the CFO.
Interesting.
And I go, oh, okay. So he said, we've never had a professional manager who's managed more than 5 people.
Yeah.
So we'd love to bring you over, teach you the business, bring your relationships to us, and help me grow this company. So that's how I got into it. It was a relationship that he and I had, and he and I enjoyed a fantastic organization called Directors Mortgage, which, went from a very small little company in Riverside to the largest government lender in California, the largest home builder takeout lender in the Western states. And so that's how I got in the mortgage business. And from that start, I would have probably still been there had not Gary tragically died.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other story. But we can we'll go through that someday. But he was a tremendous man. He was a tremendous person in the mortgage industry in those days, which had small independent mortgage companies, basically, and then savings and loans and credit unions.
Yeah.
The banks we only did government loans.
That's right.
You
had to drive the files in.
Oh yeah, to the VA, downtown LA.
Yes.
And you would have a candy bar or like a $20 bill. You'd slide it in for the VA lady who would stamp it, and you'd drive out of LA. I'm serious.
I know.
It was like a payday bar.
I know. Oh, here you go, dear.
It was something. But conventional loans and jumbo loans were only done by banks because we weren't sophisticated, and Fannie and Freddie really hadn't got their legs yet. And then we got into conforming, and then ultimately we got into small jumbos with correspondent relationships, but we never obviously had our jumbo product like a Loan Depot does today.
What was when was the moment you decided, or did you ever know that you were going to stay in this industry?
Well, I'll tell you a story about that, because I'd been in the business about 9 months, and I was working for Gary at Directors Mortgage.
Yeah.
And the largest home builder in the Inland Empire, and probably in Southern California, was a family business called Lewis Homes.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph and Goldie Lewis had started this company. They had 4 boys. They were all in the business, and they were a large landowner and were building a lot of properties in the Inland Empire and Orange County.
Yeah.
So I had met him, I think, at a couple of meetings, but I'd really never introduced myself. So I decided to make a call on Ralph Lewis and convince him to do business with me at Directors Mortgage.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so, I kind of felt like Bud Fox trying to get into Gordon Gekko, right? I kept calling and calling, going to see his secretary and administrative
He's not
person.
in.
He's not. He's
I see him.
Exactly. He just left. Oh my goodness. So finally I get this appointment with Ralph. And so I go into Ralph's office, and he's not in the office at the time. And I sit in this big sofa, and he's got this big desk. And if you wouldn't probably know Ralph Lewis, but Ralph was a big human being. He was just a big man. And he was an interesting character. Obviously, everything was done on a handshake. He was just one of those kind of people that, his word was what it was. So I'm sitting there looking around the room, trying to figure out, is there anything I can relate to this guy with?
Yeah.
I'm a sales guy.
Yeah.
Looking around.
Anything, pictures.
So I look up on the wall, and I see a certificate that says that he's a CPA. So I go, oh, okay. So this guy's an accountant.
Yep.
So we have nothing in common right now.
I was going to say, you're screwed.
Yeah. And I go, so I'm looking at that going, okay, he's a smart guy. He's an accountant. He was a CPA. And then I look over on the other side, and it's got a Doctor of Jurisprudence sign. And I go, so he's a lawyer and he's a CPA.
This is going to go real good.
I started to realize at that moment that I was in deeper than I should be. And as confident as I was that I could, sell ice to Eskimos.
Yes.
Ralph comes in, very gentlemanly, sits down by his desk and says, well, what can you do for me? And I said, I said, well, I work for Directors Mortgage. And he says, yeah, I know Directors. They're here in the Inland Empire,
Yep.
And I go, well, who does your mortgages today? And he goes, well, we have 2 or 3 companies that are our preferred lenders.
Yep.
And I go, oh, well, we'd certainly like to be one of them. And he goes, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
What can you do they can't do? Right.
Geez.
So all of a sudden, and I told Alec this earlier, that my best sales call was a non-call. And I realized at that moment that I was not ready for this meeting.
Oh,
I go, I'm talking to, a lawyer, a CPA guy. So then I turned to him.
how old were you, by the way? Do you remember?
I don't know, in 1987 or so, that was 41 years ago. So I was probably 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so I look over now and I'm kind of panicking. I can feel,
This
my
meeting's going nowhere.
yeah, my Snoopy tie is starting to corrode.
Yeah.
It's getting
The
bad.
clip-ons falling off.
Wow. And Ralph's looking at me like right through my
Yeah.
body and giving me an X-ray. And I go, so I look over and I go, oh, I see, you got your law degree. I was going to be a lawyer when I graduated from college. I just never kind of got to it, but I was always fascinated by it. I go, where did you go to law school? And he just looks at me and he goes, oh, I didn't. And I go, oh, well, I thought that was your license to practice law in California. He goes, it is. And I go, and he goes, I just took the test.
Oh no, you're so. Did you just excuse yourself at that point?
You're close. I said, Mr. Lewis, would you do me a favor? And he goes, oh, what's that? And I go, would you accept another appointment with me a month from today? And he goes, why? And I go, because I'm not ready for this one today. And I want to be ready the next time I talk with you. And I got up and he looked at me puzzled and he said, okay, see you in a month. I go, thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I left. And I walked out to my car and I realized, and the lesson I realized was that to be a top salesman, to be a great salesman, you have to know enough. You have to understand what you're trying to do, and you have to have learned enough about your customer that you don't look like I did in this meeting. So I left that meeting determined that I was going to be the best salesman, mortgage salesman in the history of mortgage sales, which of course never happened. But what I did do is they had 14 active communities that they were building in the Inland Empire, all over the place.
Yep.
I drove to every single community. I met with their sales manager there. I talked to them about their product. I knew the names of all their communities. I had a book that I was writing down the name of the community, the models, the pricing, all this stuff. And then I talked to them about the kind of customers they're getting, where they're coming from, and I was just gathering information on each project. Then I went back to my office and I sat down with my senior underwriting group.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, here's the sales prices these guys are in. Here's what can we do?
Type of customer. Yeah.
What kind do we have bond program? What do we? And so they would load me up with, in this particular community, you could use this and that'd probably be helpful, blah, blah, blah. So I had this book. It was like, I don't know, 20 pages of notes and stuff on each community. So I went back to Ralph's office a month later. I come in with the book. Ralph's looking at me like, okay.
Welcome back.
I go, Mr. Lewis, you built a beautiful home. I've been to all 14 of your communities in the last month. And I can tell you, if I could afford any of them, I would have bought one. But I did get a chance, I think, to look at each community, and I could probably make 3 or 4 extra sales happen in at least 6 of your communities from your current lenders. And he said, really? Which ones? So I literally opened my book.
Drop it out.
Gave him that data. Then he said, what is that? I said, that's a book of notes about your communities. He said, well, can I see it?
Oh gosh.
I said, sure. So I roll it over to him. He flips through a few pages of it and just looks at it, because I printed back. I don't write because I'm illegible. So I only print. So he looked at it, shoves it back to me, and he goes, I'd like to get a copy of this book and share it with my executive staff.
Okay.
I said, you can have this one. I've already memorized it.
Yeah.
And he laughed. And I go, I didn't take the lawyer's exam, but I did memorize that book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go in and take it cold.
So he laughed and he said, you know what? Directors is going to be one of our lenders, and I'll get back to you. We'll let you know what community we're going to start with, but I appreciate all the work you've done here. And I left. And from that day forward, we got one community, and then we got more communities, and we got a team of people, and we did over 1,500 houses with them over the next 3 years. But the lesson really was about being authentic and recognizing when you aren't prepared and you weren't gonna really make a difference in that sale, it's better just to pull the plug and get prepared.
Yeah.
And then I've never had a meeting with another builder or even a real estate broker where I wasn't better prepared. And today, of course, you have knowledge and information everywhere.
Yeah, but still people do go unprepared into meetings.
But that's because I just said they think that they're just going to go in and talk about their company. But that's not what being prepared is.
No.
Prepared is talking about their company and how their company can benefit from your company.
Yep.
So that's where they make the big mistake, or I made the big mistake.
No, I think it's universal. People go into meetings and talk about themselves.
Yeah, and I realized at that moment that I'm never going to be that humiliated again, because that was ugly. And
you got yourself out of there though in a very strategic way.
Oh man,
that was on your feet thinking,
because it was going down.
Yeah,
fast.
You're just like, I guess I'm going to leave now. Excuse me. I'm going to take. Can I take my card back? Yeah,
I have some intestinal problems. I have to leave now.
Go. That's almost better.
It's just no, but I was just dead honest with the man, and we had a great relationship with the Lewis family and all of his sons. I've known them for a long time, and so it was a very pivotal moment in my sales career. And it also, I started to recognize the value of mortgages versus title, for example. I mean, everybody gets title policy and that's great, but mortgages actually enable people to own something. We are at the critical end between the intermediary, which is the realtor or the home builder, and the consumer.
Yeah.
And we put those two together, and we give the consumer the power to acquire what they desire and what they dream and what they sustainably can handle.
Yep.
Right. So to me, I thought that was really cool. And I met so many great people in the mortgage business who were talented in what they do. And I continue to after all these years. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have been incredibly talented from the builders to architects to even real estate agents and real estate brokers who would have incredibly good insights on how to build their business. So I fell in love with the mortgage business after that beating, and I loved the fact that the sky was the limit. You could do however hard you wanted to work, however much you wanted to earn in your life, how many people you'd want to serve, you could do it in the mortgage space. That to me was pretty exciting.
I still think it's one of the hidden gems of the industries of the United States. Just people don't understand what's here.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, there's not a university where you get a degree in mortgage banking. Although, back in the day, they did have mortgage banking school, and this is kind of ironic because as soon as I got to directors, basically Gary said, "You're going to Illinois, you're going to Northwestern University for a 2-week mortgage banking."
Oh, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
There you go.
And that's all the knowledge you could learn is 2 weeks.
That's all you need.
That's right.
That's the depth of the industry.
So I went back with a bunch of other people from all over the country because that's where they held the mortgage banking classes, and took the class.
Oh gosh,
and learned quite a bit over 2 weeks that I didn't know. I mean, literally how to qualify a borrower, how to do MI, how to calculate ratios. I mean, some stuff that was just basic.
Yeah,
but I didn't know.
Yeah,
and the guy who handed out the graduate certificates, ironically, at that class was the president of the MBA, Angelo Mazzello.
No.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
That is wild.
That is very strange. I didn't know him from Adam, by the way.
Of course.
At that time.
Well, and it wasn't he wasn't who he was in our industry till much later than that.
No, but he was at Countrywide. Countrywide was not Countrywide back in those days.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, that was an interesting tidbit. But there was a school, and it was actually even that 2 weeks with the minimal amount of information you can get in 2 weeks, you pretty much learned, the basics.
Yeah.
And then you have to, as you said, you have to learn it file by file, person by person, talk to your underwriting and ops staff, and they train you up the best they possibly can.
With pain and whips
and then you go out there and try to sell the whole thing as opposed to you. That's the other thing. You cannot sell you. You have to sell the whole team, because the whole team is you.
Yeah.
And I think as a mortgage person, a title guy, frankly, I could just sell me.
Yeah.
Because the title policy is pretty much the title policy. Weren't a lot of differentiators, right? No pricing policy differentiators. So it's just really me. Mortgage was like there's a ton of plates that have got to be spun properly to make it work.
Yeah. Your processor, your underwriter, the closer,
If you
all of it.
If you don't have, if you don't believe in the village and the team,
Yeah.
and you're selling, it's not just me, it's this whole group that are going to make sure my commitments come through, then you're again making another mistake that's going to come back to haunt you, because those relationships are critical, and they're your ability to sell them properly and not oversell them, and yet be strong with them is very critical.
All right, I got a funny story, and then it'll lead me to a question. So one of the things I learned from you early on was watching your tennis career while you were a professional and also playing tennis. For those of you that don't know, Dan is give him a racket and he's a terror on anything. Ping pong, doesn't matter. Just terror, pickleball. So I used to watch him play tennis, and he used to win a bunch of tournaments. You used to win a bunch of tournaments. And I would ask you questions like, and the tennis tournaments, for those of you that don't know, were like all day slog fests. You know, you start in the morning and you play somebody, and then it's just whoever can just not die is who wins. Because you're all every match you're getting beat up. And so I used to ask you, how did you win so many things? What would you attest to it? Because what I watched you play, you were a very scrappy player. Yeah. You ran down every ball. You never just quit on a play. It didn't matter how important the play was, game point or first point. It was like every play was mattered. Right. And you told me, and I don't know if you remember this, but I used this in my origination career. You told me that I'm not the best player out there. I'm going to get beat. Someone's going to beat me, but they're going to lose their next match because they're going to be so exhausted, so tired from just going to war with me for 4 hours that I'll lose, but they'll lose the next one. And you watch. So I used to use that in origination, because back in the days before Dodd-Frank, you give your commission up and just keep lowering your commission, keep giving a better rate. And I was like, I'll do this deal for free. I'm going down to the earth because I'm not going to lose. Right. So on that story, I have asked this for every guest so far in the season. I think there's moments in our lives or careers, like that mini one for me, where I was different because of that moment. It was kind of like, a fork in the road's a big term, but we all have these micro or macro moments where life is different post that moment. So I'd love for you to share a transformative moment that set your life on a different path, type of a thing, for people that are listening today that might give them some inspiration.
Okay, well, sticking kind of to the tennis theme, I was a pretty mediocre tennis player when it came to skill set. A lot of these guys that were great champions, started when they were very young, 2, 3, 4, 5, had private instructors. I started when I was 15 because I didn't want to die in football. I wasn't smart enough to play baseball. And I ran track until I found out that I wasn't fast enough to run track, but I was pretty quick. I found the difference between quick and fast, by the way.
Yes, that's the thing.
I was very quick.
Yes.
Fast part was a little bit of a problem. So I said, tennis has got to be out there. So I went out for the tennis team in high school, and, we had a coach, and he tried to, all of our rackets were carved out of a tree, wood rackets. And I just refused to let a ball get by me. That was the whole goal. It wasn't to hit winners. It wasn't to be amazing with my shot production. I was like the Pac-Man guy.
Yeah.
And I would drive the other guy to where he would get crazy and hit the ball too hard and knock it out of bounds and make a mistake. See, the great thing about tennis is he can beat himself. You don't beat him. He beats you.
He'll make the mistake.
Yeah. And that's still a point for you. It's all good. So I did that for high school, and I did get a little bit better.
2-time All-American. Yeah, you did okay.
Well, I went to college where I really learned how to play tennis. And so this is kind of where my story is going. I have a story about tennis at the University of Redlands. We had a very good tennis team. We were the number one tennis team in the what I would call Division III NAIA small college division. Mm-hmm. And we played all the big schools because our coach Verdict was well known, and we played Stanford and USC. And as a small college, that was not normally on their schedule.
No.
So my sophomore year, I was, on the team, hanging on. There were really some good players on the team, obviously. And all of a sudden, there was a woman at our school. Her name was Janice Metcalf, and Janice was on the women's tennis team, but she had been the number one 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old. She was the
No,
number
she's
one
badass.
woman in the world in that age.
Wow.
So in college, she's playing on the women's tennis team, but no one can take a game from Janice.
Oh, she's just dominating everybody.
Yeah, she was 6'1", by the way, probably 100 and I don't know, 35 pounds. She looked like a string bean, but boy, could she hit the ball hard. And she was the sweetest, most humble lady. I just amazing, and a competitor, brutal. We used to practice with her just so we could like get better strokes. So apparently, she went to our coach and said, "How would you feel about me if I tried out for the men's team and played on your men's team? Because the women are not that competitive."
Oh,
and of course, our coach is going, "Well, I'll look it up." And he looked it up and goes, "There's no reason,
no rule.
I can't find a rule saying that you can't play on the men's team." So Janice Metcalf came out on the squad
to try out for the men's team.
Oh yeah, and of course we're all looking at her.
What is this?
Yeah, we're looking at her.
70.
This is 74.
Yeah.
So she comes out, and we know her already.
Well, yeah, because
she's been hitting.
The tennis. Yeah.
And we're going, well, okay. And so a couple guys are very upset because they're thinking she's going to take their spot on the ladder because it's a very competitive ladder.
Yeah, that she's going to kick them off.
They weren't pleased, right?
No. Janice is going to take your lunch.
So long story short, Janice made the men's team.
Really?
And played all season with us on the men's team. And I can just tell you, all the ladies that may be watching, Janice was a force of nature. And whenever we would play another school, this was always the fun part of the whole thing.
Oh, they see Janice walk out.
Well, first of all, we'd all pile out of the van, which I'm sure Janice really enjoyed being in a van with 6 sweaty guys. But she comes out, she's in a sweatsuit with a hat, her hair up under her hat, and a sweatsuit, and she walks out. And at first, they don't know that she's a lady right away. It just doesn't dawn on them. They aren't thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, some poor guy realizes, oh my God,
I'm playing Janice.
I am playing a lady, right?
And this is 74. I mean, if you lose,
well, in those days, that was a real macho deal, right?
Oh,
well, the problem with that is it wasn't hard to lose to Janice. Janice had a big serve, huge ground strokes, and would just blow you off the court if you weren't smart enough to dink and lob her and try to stay away from her. So she would play all these guys, and they would just be dying out there. And of course, pretty soon it became known that we had a woman on our team, and all the college kids would come down and watch the matches in the afternoon, and they'd all want to watch one match.
Well, of course, because to them it's a spectacle.
It was amazing. So that's not really the reason for this story, but we always hear the term, you got to show up no matter what. If you show up enough times, you're going to win.
Yeah.
And I've heard that a lot, but Janice taught me something I'll never forget. So we were going back to the Nationals in 1974 as the defending national champions. And
big deal.
It was a big deal. And we always had the same, the coach was very ritualistic about what we did, when we flew, where we ate, where we stayed. It was exactly the same.
Yep.
So we left on a Sunday in June. And in Kansas City in June, by the way, is a real super nice. Cool place to play. But anyway, so on Sunday that day, Janice was playing in a big tournament here in Orange County with the coach's son who had graduated the year before. They were in the finals on Sunday, and we were saying, well, we're flying out Sunday at 10 o'clock. So Janice, just default the finals and we're going to nationals. Get in the plane. We're going back to win the nationals. This is like the big thing. The coach said, I think she can play the tournament. Don't worry about it.
With his son.
Okay. And then she'll fly back later and she'll be fine. Well, she played in the finals. She fell. She tore a meniscus and had to be taken to the hospital. And she was basically, out of commission.
Oh.
So we're all back in Kansas City Sunday night having dinner. And the coach gets this call from his son, I suspect. It says, Janice got hurt. She's out. Coach just goes, oh my goodness. So he comes to us and he says, Janice is not coming. She hurt herself. And we're all going, yeah, I told you so. We're so mad.
Oh my gosh.
Because if you're in the Nationals, when you turn in your sheet of players, you can't change that when you get there.
So you're down a player now.
You're down a player, and whatever points Janice would have won, you're out.
Oh.
So we're just, pissed now because maybe our national championship hopes are going to be impacted. 'Cause
Yeah.
they're always close. I mean, it's always nobody smashes that place. It's always a point here, point there. So anyway, Monday morning we get up, we're getting ready to go.
Yeah.
I look out my window of the hotel and I see this gal in a sweat outfit limping up with her knee. It looked like, I don't know, it looked like a bowling ball.
Bionic knee.
And she's limping toward our hotel. And I go, oh my gosh, Janice is here. She showed up to root for the team, right? And this woman probably had been in terrible pain, took an all-night flight back in Kansas City, and I'm going,
Oh my gosh.
and of course we're all incredibly mature and and so thrilled she's here.
Oh no.
Yeah, we're saying, we hate
Thanks
you
a lot.
we hate you. You've betrayed us.
Ruined the chance.
It's unbelievable. So as fate would have it, a couple players, including Janice, got a bye the first round. And if you get a bye, that means you don't play in the morning, you play in the afternoon on the Monday, because you play like 6 days in a row. It is a real war fest.
Yeah.
But if you win that first match, you get 2 points, because you get a point for the bye and a point for the win.
Yep.
But if you don't play in the match, you lose all points.
You forfeit.
You don't get the bye point, you get nothing.
Yeah.
So Janice sees this, and we're going off to our matches now because we're focused on, I got to beat this next guy who wants to kill me.
Yeah.
And
you got stuff to do.
Yeah. So we're gone. So Janice Metcalf, I'll never forget this. She goes out on the court to play this guy who his last name was Fink. I'll never forget. I think it was Mark Fink. And she and the coach is with her. The poor woman cannot move more than 2 steps either direction.
Well, and
can't.
Tennis is lateral. I mean, you're doomed.
She can't move more than two steps either direction. Now she's tall. She's got maybe a 6-foot wingspan on both sides of it. So she can serve.
Kind of.
Stands there and kinds of serves. And she's literally, as coach said, the woman is just kind of, grinding and crying and just, the pain. And this poor guy, Mark Fink, is watching this lady, go through.
You got to feel terrible.
And he's just, and of course, Janice's strategy now is when she does hit the ball, she's hitting it as hard as she can in a corner.
Because she got one shot.
That's right.
She get chased out of ball.
So she's just blowing it.
Just
bam.
Full.
And so he's freaking out. So, as God is my witness, she beats this poor guy. 6'3", 6'3".
No way.
They literally, an ambulance came and carted her to the hospital because her knee now is really wrecked. Because it was, it was already hurt, but now it's really just a mess. We don't know this. So we get back to our room and coach comes in and he goes, Janice went off to the hospital. We go, oh, that's a bummer.
No, you understand. No, you understand.
But she did win her first match. And we were all just like, what? She played? And he goes, yeah. And I go, oh my God. So we now are like so intense that she would go through this for us, that we played like, demons. Anyway, 1974, Redlands University, national champions. We won by 1 point. So you think about that and you go, that's showing up. That's courage. That's a lot of heart.
Yeah.
That's somebody who, when you're crying about some appraisal you can't get or some other thing, this gal, came back and did something that was pretty heroic. And I'll never forget everybody on our team, it was like, we're going to give this championship to Janice, because without her coming back and doing this ridiculously incredible thing, we would have probably not won the tournament.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to know Janice very well. We played many pro matches together, and unfortunately she had her 3rd knee surgery, and that's what stopped her from being on the world stage, actually.
Yeah.
But I only mention it because, these are stories that connect, who you are and how you face adversity and how you handle stressful situations. And I just remember looking out that window and seeing her limp up going, wow. First of all, just the fact, I thought she just was showing up to watch us.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she was.
Yeah.
But then she realized that she was going to give up a point if she didn't try to play. So why not try? And if she lost, right? But she had to try. She didn't have to, but she did.
Totally.
So for everybody who listens to these kinds of stories, they should give you some level of inspiration. Janice was inducted in the University of Redlands Hall of Fame. She's been on the World Cup team, but I can't think of a time when I was prouder of all her accomplishments than what she did that day.
Yeah.
And it changed some things in the way that I handle difficult situations, and showing up and having the courage and integrity, even when you've really blown it.
Yeah.
And you showing up is tough.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a bunch of love.
Well, I mean, she shouldn't have played that game before.
No.
And she probably regretted that forever.
Yeah. But here she was. So
yeah.
that was a tennis and athletic story. And I'm sure if you've ever been in athletics, anybody who's listening to this, you've had similar kinds of strange things happen on an athletic field where people did superhuman stuff.
Yeah.
And it changed the way which you could think what you could do. Like if Janice can come out and fly all night long and get out here and do this with a broken leg, I probably can win my next match against this guy.
Yeah.
My leg doesn't hurt too much.
Exactly.
So that was an interesting, a great story of a great woman who showed all of us what heart was about.
Well, let me ask you this, because we got a few more minutes to unpack some more stuff here. You've been in the mortgage industry a while.
Yes, since 1986.
86. You've seen a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
What's a story from the mortgage industry that stands out for you? Whether it was a team coming together, a personal performance from something, a situation somebody did, what do you recall from all the stories you've amassed that stands out for you? That would be relevant to the sales people out there today that are really trying to figure out, I think we're on the edge of potentially a very, very difficult market.
Mm-hmm.
It could be another, not great, but good market, or it could be really difficult,
mm-hmm.
or it could be fantastic. Rates could come, we're in all this uncertainty. What stands out for you in your experience that might be helpful?
Well, when you've been in something for a long time, the one thing you do get, aside from the experiences you've had and the pain that you've endured,
scars, and
I mean, if you look at the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010, if you look at every decade, and now I'm like in my 5th decade, it's kind of terrifying. Each one of them had significant crises that changed the mortgage industry and had people get out of the business, quit, react,
Yeah.
And I mean, in the 80s, it was the S&L crisis that just crushed everything, and everyone thought it was basically the mini Great Recession that we had later.
Yeah.
Right.
Precursor.
It changed the way in which we operated in the mortgage space. In the 90s, we had a tremendous refinance boom, just like this. 1993 was not like 2020, but it was very similar.
Yeah. When it happened again in 2003.
Well, 2003 was amazing. It was like everybody was doing refis. It was crazy. And then 2004, rates started to move up, and all of that I would call, I don't want to say flab, but all that bad. You didn't have to fish. The fish just jumped into the boat.
Yeah.
So all the fishing skills were like
atrophied,
weaker.
Yeah.
So 1994, rates started moving up. Companies had to react. So there was layoffs. There was all kinds of cost movements. Sales was much harder. It was very difficult. The rest of the 90s, were bumpy. There was a lot of every year was a little different, choppier.
Yeah.
And I think I would say to certainly all the loan originators on this podcast that, we're going to not only are we going to a different market, but we're going to a different way in which we're going to access our business.
Yeah.
That's a double transition.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's not just interest rates may go up or whatever. It's the consumer's the customer. And in the past, we never thought of the consumer as our customer. We always thought of our referral partners as our customer, and we devoted all of our marketing to the referral partners.
Yes.
None to the consumer.
None. Zero.
They were just a byproduct of our relationship with the referral partner.
Yeah.
Today, that is clearly moving.
Yeah.
And we are now, seeing that we're getting to the top of the funnel, and the realtors are actually, according to Tom Ferry, 50% of their commissions in the future are going to be split with likely a lender who's referring them a borrower. That's a dramatic change, right? So everyone who's listening, what I would say to you is that you can't think you're just going to worry about interest rates going up and down and sell the same old, rate and term refinance or purchase a new home. It's going to be, how do I get to the consumer, gain their confidence?
Yeah.
How do I get to the top of the funnel and succeed? And I know we're trying to do that here at Loan Depot dramatically.
Yeah.
Many people on this call are doing a tremendous job getting that done.
Yeah.
Now that we're servicing business, that's going to give us another direct into
Touch
the
point.
consumer,
Yep.
and that's going to be huge for us. And people who don't service, that's a huge disadvantage, frankly.
Yeah.
In this kind of an environment. So, in my career, this is the first time I've seen the double. The way in which we capture business is changing, and the market's going to do what it always does, which is change all the time.
Yeah.
I think if you grab onto that and understand that marketing, and I've said this once before many times, marketing is more important than product competency. I'm not saying you shouldn't be product competent. You should, but it's not as important. And you can be the most brilliant, competent product person in the world, but there's nobody to talk to.
Yeah. I know exactly how to structure a loan,
but there's
no one in the room.
So you got to be a great marketer in the future to be a winner in the mortgage business, period. That's it. If you're not, you will never be a CE person. You will never achieve your potential, and you will never, in my opinion, be as great as you could be without learning that skill. And by the way, it's complex. It's ever changing. There's so many different, Alec, Alec tells me about all these different channels. I'm lucky I figure out where Facebook is, and then I get hacked. So, it's like, it's not good.
It's true.
But I think originators today have to be more sophisticated in marketing.
Yeah.
They have to be more sophisticated in technology and how to leverage technology, where in my day, that wasn't the most important thing. It was showing up. It was being absolutely physically, work harder than your competitor.
Yeah.
Today, that's a different story.
Although what I'll compliment that on, or add another thought to, is, I heard this before and I say it a lot now, that the game didn't change. The place in which we play the game changed and is changing. And so, at the end of the day, we're all just still humans, and we all have our own fears and thoughts.
Yep.
And the game before was relationship building with great referral partners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's still a massive part of the game. But to your comment, now you have the opportunity to build relationships directly to consumers much easier. And to your point, it's much more important to do that than it has ever been before.
That's right.
And so I think that's one of the things that I think challenges the industry is we were taught a certain way on how to do our trade. Mm-hmm. And now that's changed, and it's disruptive, and there's new things. And
And I think, we've seen interest rates move up and down. We've seen regulatory
oh my God,
scrutiny go up and down, right? And we're seeing it again. And again, we're going to be looking very much at how we do our business, not just how much we do, but how we do our business.
Yeah.
How we treat every American trying to access credit.
Yep.
How do we provide opportunity for people that may not have had the same advantages that others have to learn the process and to get into the game?
Yep.
Right. And that's a big responsibility for us.
Yeah.
And we're great at it. I mean, 40% of our business here at Loan Depot is with a diverse crowd.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it'll probably be 50 and 60 in the purchase market as we go forward, because that's what the first time home buyer market is going to consist of.
Yeah.
So our ability to attract diversity of language, of race, of understanding of culture, all those things are going to make such a dramatic impact in our ability to succeed in the future. I'm very excited for that, by the way. I think that's going to be a fantastic thing for our industry.
Well, so as a closing comment, Dan, for people, what would you share with the mortgage community? And I'm going to leave that open-ended.
Well, for me, mortgage has been very, very good for me. It's been good because it gave me respect for people. It helped me understand what the right thing to do is in most circumstances, because you could watch how that affects people.
Yeah.
You've seen people who did not have that kind of integrity fade out in our business. They might do really well for a while.
Yep.
And they kind of burn out themselves and everybody else.
Yep.
I've been blessed. I've met the best people in the world in this industry. I couldn't ask for a finer group of professionals that I've been working with throughout my career. And if they weren't finer professionals, I just didn't end up working with them anymore.
Yeah.
Which was great. And I'm sure for them it was as well. But I really I want everybody on the call to think about their life stories and how they're impacted from them, and share them with people so they can impact them as well. It's a great thing to be a mentor for others, a friend of others. As originators, share ideas together. So many people just say, well, I can't give away that secret. That's critical.
All the time.
And I go, first of all, that's not a secret. And you should collaborate and celebrate each other's successes, because it is a hard business.
Yeah.
And we will have harder times, and we have to rely on one another and help one another. And as a salesperson, we have a responsibility to our operations staff to bust our ass to make sure that there's room for operations staff and more operations staff as we grow our company.
Yeah.
I mean, people forget about that. We are responsible
to
drive that growth. And if we can't make sales happen and other people win, it's like I said to you many times, I may lose to that guy, but he's going to be tired. I'm going to nick him on the way out. He's going to get his Achilles is going to get a little chip on the way out. And the next time he faces me, he goes, you know what? You're not worth it. I am not going to deal with you on another relationship battle, because the last one, I'm still limping.
Yep.
Great. That's the kind of guy I want to deal with, because that's who he should be. So I love this industry. I love the competitiveness of it. I love the fact that we're doing something really important for people's lives.
Yeah.
And we're facilitating a great industry, which is the home building and real estate industry.
Yeah. All right, Dan. Well, thank you for coming on the Modeling Podcast. Thank you for the stories. It's always fun. I know there's a truckload full more of them, so we'll have to figure out how to get those into the public.
Yeah, we'll have to do a big fish thing at some point where we can really, I can go off in the river and you can drop me off. It'll be fantastic.
Everybody, thank you for hanging out with the Modeling Podcast. We're done today. Tune in for more episodes coming soon and a special guest in November. Peace.
Take care, everybody.